Okay, great. So it is time for us to get going here. I see the attendees number jumping up quite a bit. Just in about just a few seconds here, we'll be able to get running. Okay, great. So I start to see that number slowing down. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Really important session. This session will serve as lesson one in our MarketSurge University section. And so this is really the introduction to MarketSurge. I know when I first started out, when I first saw MarketSurge, frankly, I felt a little bit overwhelmed by it. So this session was a huge step for me and really showed me where everything is at and really all the key tools and how we're using them to find and analyze stock ideas for the types of ideas that we're really interested in buying and when we're going to be selling those stocks. So we're going to go over all those things and hopefully you'll feel much more comfortable using MarketSurge by the end of this session. Okay, so starting off with a disclaimer. So nothing I mention on here is a buy or sell recommendation. This is all just for educational purposes only. So please just take a quick moment to read this. And I am the speaker today. I'm Jacob Bradley. I am a proud MarketSurge coach here. Been here for about 5 years now. I use MarketSurge every day, so I'm certainly comfortable with the tool, and I'm so proud to work here and to be able to share MarketSurge with other investors. All right, so for the agenda, pretty straightforward for this one, right? I really just want to get you familiar with the program. So we're going to go over the MarketSurge homepage and the various resources that are available on there. We're going to talk about the chart platform and its functionality, really for all the key tools in there. We're going to talk about the routine, right? So each day when we sign into MarketSurge, we want to have a game plan, right? Where are we looking for ideas? How are we analyzing ideas? I'm going to show you how to do that. And then, of course, we'll share our contact information. We're really big on supporting people, so I will show you how to reach out to us. And now let's head over to our live demo. So I am opening up MarketSurge here. So this is our MarketSurge landing page. When you first sign in to MarketSurge, this is the page that it brings you to. And, frankly, it could be quite easy to fall into the temptation of just going straight to the charts, right? Just blown right by the homepage and heading over to the charts. But there's some really key things on here. They're going to be extremely instrumental to you while you're using MarketSurge, particularly early on as you're getting used to MarketSurge. Now, the very first one, absolutely critical, is up here at the top under the resources section. So right now I just place my mouse over resources and this little drop down box shows up and I'm going to click on webinars right here. So that's what we'll do right here. And this is our webinars page. And I'll tell you, we have a lot of webinars, more webinars than you'll probably ever be able to watch. The very first section that you'll see, this is the important one for anybody starting out. This was really, really critical for me, the MarketSurge University. So the MarketSurge University is tailored toward the new user of MarketSurge. So what I did is I started out at lesson one. So you're actually going to see this very session that I'm doing right now posted here later on today. And then there's 11 other videos. And those 11 other videos are really starting to dive into specific topics within MarketSurge. So some of our favorite reports, such as the RS Line Blue Dot. We have another one of those over here. We have one about, say, institutional sponsorship and so on. So what I did is I started the lesson one. I watched all of them. Probably most people just pick and choose, right? Really based on a particular topic that you think might help you. If you're really maybe getting more comfortable with the buying rules, you might want to check out a webinar like that and so on. That's not the only section, right? There are, I think we're over 270 now, right? We have a lot of webinars in here and one section to go. If you're ever maybe you've already watched the MarketSurge University or you want something else, the MarketSurge Classics down here at the bottom. These are awesome. Were all part of our special events that we've done over the years. And so usually we're bringing in heavy hitters. So frequently my manager My boss, Scott, does these and we'll bring in special guests. And these ones are always just quite special. I can just press on this little arrow over here and I can see all of them. So if you find one that stands out to you, you really can't go wrong in any of the MarketSurge classics for sure. One note while we're talking about these webinars, there is an app for MarketSurge. So being that you have access, right? You have access to MarketSurge. You can download the app. If you're on an iPhone, you'll use the App Store. If you're on an Android, use the Google Play Store. Type in MarketSurge in there, download the app. You'll use your same sign in, you'll use the same password, and you'll have access to the app. There's no extra cost to it. It's already built into your MarketSurge. You can watch all of the webinars on your phone. So that's what I did a lot. As I was getting familiar with it, I really wanted to get up to speed as fast as possible. And sometimes, go on a walk, listen to a webinar, do something around the house, listen to a webinar, on the couch, watch a webinar. And that was extremely helpful. But beyond that, the webinar or the app has about 80 to 90% of the features of the computer version of MarketSurge. It's really great, really high quality, very beautiful and slick app. Highly recommended. They did not cheap out when they were building it, and definitely want to take advantage of that. Okay, so I'm going to press the home button, take us back here. And another thing, the market snapshot. So something that is critical to us is what is the market actually doing? Right. So we don't want to go out and, plunge into a bad market, right? As everything's selling off. That'd be very painful. You can do, incredible amounts of, damage to a portfolio by doing that. Right. We want to be really strategic. We want to buy into, really strong stocks during really strong markets. That's when we really get a lot of that upside potential. And when the market's weak, we want to really be more defensive. Right. We're going to be taking money off the table and really protect our cash pile, and then wait till there's a better time to be into the market when things really are working and invest then. And so the market snapshot is helping us accomplish that, and it's extremely easy to use, right? So we have an entire system for analyzing the market. Even have a markets team that's going in and analyzing the market every day, doing all the heavy lifting for us, and they post a current outlook right here. So we'll see it says current outlook, and it has a recommended exposure of 60% to 80%. So that is a recommended investment, right, for one's entire portfolio to be invested 60% to 80% in stocks. And so my advice is when you're using MarketSurge each day when you sign in, just take the 2 seconds to look at this, right? And it'll just give you some type of idea. It's almost like checking the weather before you go outside, right? Is it raining? Is it sunny? Is it snowy? Is it foggy? Just so that way you really know as you're kind of heading out into the market, really how you should strategize, what to expect when you see in the market, and whether we're in a good or bad market. And then finally, we have the week in review video over here. So every week there's going to be a new video posted here. Most weeks, it'll be on Friday about 2 hours after the market closes. It's a video called Take on the Market, done by my manager, Scott. They are excellent. I always watch them. They're extremely popular. Scott has been working in the markets for decades. He really knows his stuff. He has a great quality to his presentations. And I definitely recommend checking those out sometime over the weekend, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This most recent week, because we were at the end of the month, there was a Stay in Step webinar. It's a full-length webinar done by two of our senior coaches here at MarketSurge, Arnie and Harold. Very high quality, excellent webinar, probably our most popular webinar series, and that you'll see that posted here as well. So every week, at the end of the week, you're going to see a new video posted here. That's going to keep you up to date on what's going on in the market, right? So you're going to see what stocks are working, what industry groups are working, and you're really going to hear from some real pros who've been at this for a long time. That's a good way to learn, and it's a good way to kind of just help you know what things are working out in the market right now, what they're seeing. All right, so let's open up the charts. So we have this big green button here. I'm going to press that. Make this full screen. And beautiful. Here we are. Okay, so this is the MarketSurge chart. And this was the view that I first saw when I first opened MarketSurge, and I felt intimidated. I felt like I would never be able to get this. In retrospect, it all makes perfect sense, right? But at least now. But at the very first glance, I didn't know what everything was on here. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to dispel all of this and show you really all the key things that you need to know. What are the key indicators on here and how we're using them to make informed decisions in the stock market. So up at the top, we have the ticker box. So, right, we could just type in the name of a company, a ticker symbol, be able to pull up that company chart. So I just, have Alphabet's ticker symbol in here, GOOGL, and that pulls up the Alphabet chart. I can see the name of the company here. And then underneath that, I again see the ticker symbol. I see the exchange the stock trades on. So Alphabet is on the NASDAQ. And then this is where things really start to get interesting. This is where we start to get into the proprietary data that we make in-house. We have this blue text here that tells us about the industry group. So you'll see that it says internet content there. That's the industry group that Alphabet is in. And so what we're doing on our end is we are building all the industry groups for the entire market. And so we're bundling up stocks that are in the same industry together. So, the big oil companies are in the same industry group. Coke and Pepsi are in the same industry group, and so on. And the reason we do that is because a lot of the same broader economic stock market factors tend to affect companies in the same industry group in a similar manner, right? So we might think of like Coke and Pepsi, for example. If there's a huge change in like the supply or price of corn syrup or sugar, it might affect them similarly. Or if there's, a huge demand for soft drinks, it's going to affect both of them in a similar manner. And the same is true all across the entire stock market, whether it's, chip stocks or oil stocks or what have you. And so how we really make use of this is you'll see these two numbers posted here, right? So it says 90 and a slash and 197. What that's telling us is that currently the internet content group is the 90th best group out of the 197 groups in total. That's not that compelling, right? So what we want to do is we really want to focus on the best industry groups. So really the top 20 is our preferred area to go looking for ideas, but different people use different cutoffs, whether it's 20, 30, 40, 50, but really just the key idea is we want to be in that upper echelon of all the industry groups, and then we want to find the best stocks in those best industry groups. Okay, so this industry group ranking updates every day. So just keep an eye on that. That's one thing that we're looking at when deciding whether or not to buy a stock. We then have the average daily volume, really a measure of liquidity, right? We just want to be sure that for anything we buy, we're able to sell it, right? That's really the key idea because we don't want to get stuck into something. Generally not an issue on a lot of the stocks that we're looking at. Of course, Alphabet, massive company. There's tons of volume on any given trading day. Now, underneath that, one of my favorite things in the entire platform, they're called our SmartSelect ratings. And the SmartSelect ratings are giving us a breakdown on the stock in really all the key areas of interest for us. So, of course, our big goal in MarketSurge is to find and invest in the very best stocks in the market. But part of doing that is being efficient, right? There's over 10,000 securities in MarketSurge. Like there's no way we're going to go through, do this in-depth analysis on every single one of them. We need tools that's really going to make that quick for us, right? So I can very quickly identify whether a stock is of high quality or low quality, something I'm going to be interested in or not. And this is a key way to do that. It's one of the first things I look at when I pull up a chart. So let's go through them. I'll tell you, you don't need to write it down. You don't need to memorize it. Very easy way to get all these definitions. So I'm just going to give it a quick intro to each of these because they are important, but no pressure. I'll show you how to get the definition later on. So the very first one is the EPS rating. And EPS stands for earnings per share. And this rating is looking at both quarterly earnings per share and annual earnings per share. And so it's really just telling us how good is this company at making money. Really important thing, right? That's what gives these businesses value. And we can see that there's a ranking of 97. That is excellent. This is on a scale of 1 to 99. It's a percentile. So given that this is a 97, it's saying that its EPS is better than 97% of companies in the database. Very strong there. When we look at the group RS rating, right? So the second one there, group RS, that group refers to the industry group, and RS is about relative strength. So how well is the industry group performing? This one uses a letter grade. And if your school, growing up used the letter grade system, that should be pretty intuitive, right? Where A is the best, then a B, then a C, then a D, and an E is the worst possible grade in MarketSurge. This is a B minus, so just a little bit above average. We kind of see that in the ranking as well for the industry group, just a little bit above average, but not anything particularly special there. It's not like a super in favor industry group right now. Underneath that, we have the SMR rating. And SMR stands for sales, margins, and return on equity. Three very important fundamental characteristics that we look at. And the stock has an A there. That's great. And then we have the accumulation distribution rating. Really a mouthful, right? What you can think of it is buying pressure and selling pressure, right? So is there kind of net buying pressure pushing the stock higher, right? Is there a lot of buying coming in, moving the stock price up, or is there a lot of selling pressure, right? Where a lot of shares are being dumped onto the market and then the stock price is, tanking and a lot of high volume to the downside, things like that. This has a B minus. So similar to the group RS rating, a little bit more buying pressure on the stock, but it's not overwhelming. And then finally, the composite rating is extremely useful. You can think of the composite rating as being like a GPA for a stock, right? So just give me the quick answer overall. How does this stock stack up? And we can see this has a 94. So kind of looking at all these ratings all at once, we have a 94 overall score, better than 94% of companies, all things considered. So very good there. All right. So as for the technical indicators that you'll see on the chart, we start off with the price bars, right? Kind of the star of the show, right? What's the stock price actually doing? And the price bars show us that. And so each of these little bars on here represent one trading day. And they represent one day at this moment because I'm on the daily chart, right? Notice I have daily selected up here. And so each of these little bars represents one day. If the bar is blue, it means the stock price was up that day. If the bar is pink, it means the stock price was down that day. And I could even click on any of the bars, right? So I'm just left clicking right now and I could just hover over any of them and I get this little gray box showing up and it's going to tell me what happened on that day. So right now I'm clicking on January 30th. I can see the high price, low price, last price for that particular trading day. I can see what the volume was, where the stock was relative to its moving averages, all of that good stuff. Very, very easy, right? Just left click on any price bar. We also have these moving averages here, right? So we have this red line right here and this black line over here. Very important tools that we use when identifying areas of support and resistance for a stock. And so, for example, there's a lot of ways that we use this, but probably the most common is when we're in a stock and we're trying to decide whether or not to sell. And so one of the sell signals that we'll look for is that a stock starts working its way down and breaks below one of these key moving averages on high volume, right? So I'm going to talk about volume in a moment, but really getting below one of these key moving averages, it is a sign that we're kind of getting some potential sell signal. Now, it is common for stocks to get below these, but when we really see a decisive move below these is when we kind of really start to hit our potential sell signals on a stock. And then we have the relative strength line, this blue one over here. And this is a measure of leadership. Very, very important tool. And in particular, one reason I really love it, it's giving me a very important piece of information in a very easy to use manner, right? Because it's all visual. And so this relative strength line, the way that it works is if the stock is outperforming the S&P 500, the line goes up. If the stock is underperforming the S&P 500, the line goes down. And if it's the same, the line is just flat. And so we can see that very easily on the chart, right? We had about the same performance as the market. We had a lot of outperformance here, some underperformance, kind of went the same. And that's kind of where it's been ever since, right? Kind of since it sold off here, we kind of had some wiggles in there going up and down, but really it's kind of just been an average performer. All things considered, taking the longer term view on the recent stock price performance. So very helpful, gives us that subtle sign because you might not always catch that a stock is an outperformer. In a good market might just look like the stock's going up, but if you see this line going up, it's beating the market. And then also over here, we have the relative strength rating, similar to these other ratings over here that we talked about, right? These other SmartSelect ratings. This is another one of our SmartSelect ratings, but this is telling us the percentile that the stock's performance is in, right? So this stock is outperforming 77% of stocks in the database. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we have the volume bars, right? And so the price bars tell us about the actual stock price change. The volume bars tell us about the power of a stock's move. So if we get a really tall bar, it means that that is a very powerful move. And if it's a short bar, it means it's a very weak move. And so we see here, like really when this stock kind of was moving up here for some time and kind of looked like some positive characteristics, we had this very low volume, right? So not a very promising signal because when a stock is going up, we want to see if there's really high volume. That's something we look for when we're buying a stock, is that it's going up and it has a lot of really high volume. And so we see here the stock was going up, but we had this really low volume, right? And that kind of foretold some of what was to come there. And we look over here, like this is a really heavy selling, right? Over here, there's just this massive pink bar. And so what we're looking for, we're going to talk about breakouts and buying and all that stuff in a little bit. But some of the things we look for, just a really big tip on from a technical sense, is when a stock is breaking out of a base, we want to see that this line is trending up, that it's a leader in the market, it's outperforming, and we have some really good high volume coming in as the stock is going up. Okay, so that's the daily chart. I'm going to press weekly over here. And don't worry, we're not totally reinventing the wheel here, right? A lot of what we just saw is exactly the same here on the weekly chart, but there are a few key differences that I want to highlight about the daily versus the weekly chart. And I'll tell you, us coaches spend most of our time on the weekly chart. And in fact, we have a saying in-house, weeklies first. We start out our research on the weekly chart. And the first reason for that is that because it's a weekly chart, each one of these price bars now represents 1 week. And that's an advantage to us because it's less noisy, right? On a daily chart, right? Any stock, we'll see it all the time, right? It goes up 3% in a day or down 3% in a day. And that's kind of jarring when you're looking at a daily chart. But a lot of times, we always say, one day doesn't make a trend. Just because it went up 3%, we see it all the time. Stock goes up 3% today. And then the very next day, it goes right back to where it was the day before. And so that type of kind of move, that noise, can perhaps cause you to buy something you shouldn't buy or sell something you shouldn't sell. And so we get a much more kind of sober chart looking at the weekly chart because it takes 5 days just to build one of these bars. So it gives us a better idea of the trend, right? So we can see an uptrend here. The stock was trending up in a pretty uniform manner when looking at the weekly chart. We had a downtrend here, uptrend here, and then kind of just a sideways move here, right? So what's the chart really telling us? How is the stock behaving? The second thing about the weekly chart is we have this green line on here, the earnings line. This is pretty new. I absolutely love it. The moment I heard that this was coming out, I was so excited, and it really has become an important part of my stock research. And the way that it works is it gives us a visual charting of the company's changes in earnings. So as I mentioned earlier, right, what really gives a company value is how good it is at making money, right? How much money does it make? And so if this line is going up, the company is growing its earnings. If the line's going down, the company's, either decreasing its earnings or losing money at an accelerating pace. And so something that we look for when a stock is really setting up, breaking out, we want to see that the earnings are growing as well. Okay, so we want to see that line trending up. All right, finally, about the weekly chart, we have this larger data panel. This was something that threw me off early on, right? So on the weekly chart, we have this very large data panel. On the daily chart, we had that smaller data panel, right? So I remember one time I was looking at the daily chart, I was like, where's the big, where's the big, panel? I have to go over to weekly. Okay. So it's a little point of potential confusion there I want to dispel. Now you'll notice we have the same SmartSelect ratings, right? Same as the daily chart, but we also have all this extra information here. So when I see like good SmartSelect ratings, when I see a good chart, I really want to dive in and look at these fundamental characteristics. So some of the ones that I'm really looking for over here in the data panel, one is the management ownership. So we want to see that there's an alignment of interest with management. So we want to know, is our management actually shareholders themselves? Right? Because they're gonna have a lot of incentive. If a lot of their money is tied up in the stock, they're gonna want it to do well, right? And it's actually gonna impact their net worth, not just their job, but their actual amount of money that they have and their total net worth. And so we do want to see at least 1% ownership from management, right? We want them to be shareholders just like us. We want their hard-earned money in the stock. And I remember early on, 1% doesn't sound like much, but for a lot of these companies, they're big. This is what, a $2.3 trillion company. That's a big company. 1% of that is a lot of money, right? For just a small group of people. So they're certainly going to notice it when the stock price changes, and that's what we want. Underneath that, we have the number of funds, right? So really, the vast majority of buying and selling power in the market is coming from the big institutional investors, right? So they're the ones who are managing, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And when they are collectively buying up a stock or selling off a stock, it really shows up in the stock price. And so we want to identify which ones are really in favor by those folks with a really big buying power. And so we can see the change in fund ownership over the last 4 quarters here. So we can see it's September 24, right? 7,751. And that's been a little bit flat, right? There was like a very kind of marginal increase there, not a huge change. It is Alphabet, right? A lot of the big institutional investors who want Alphabet have already owned it for some time, right? They're not just finding out about it, yesterday. So not a huge change here. The key thing to look for is not so much the number of funds, but the change, right? What really gets me excited when I'm looking at a great growth stock is, let's say I see, 250 and then 500 and then 700 and then 900, right? These big institutional investors, they're seeing the promise of the company. They're excited about it. They're going out into the market. They're snapping up shares because they think it's going to outperform and they want in. That's buying pressure. That's going to push that stock price higher, right? So that's what we want to see, is really a lot of growth here, and really the bigger the growth, the better. There's not too big of a number that could go in here in terms of like the actual change, right? We really want to see that managers are just like tripping over themselves to get exposure to the stock. And then finally, and very, very, very critically, I cannot understate the importance of this, the quarterly earnings in particular, and the quarterly sales. So the better growth stocks, the kinds of things that we're looking at, are going to have at least 20% growth year over year in earnings and sales. And in particular, those last 3 quarters, right? If I really had to narrow it down, because these are going to be the most recent, we want to see at least a 20% change. And here we see that, right? Google or Alphabet is still clearing that, and really, really good for such a huge company. And the same goes for sales. We also want to see 20%. It is growing at a level below that. It is kind of close there, but maybe about 2/3 of what we'd like to see for a good growth company. This is another area where it can't be too big. So for a lot of those really, really innovative growth stocks, those companies are just coming out with a new product, totally changing the game, impacting the economy, right? Customers are just going crazy for this new product, right? We see it all the time. We saw it like Nvidia and microchips. You're just going to see massive numbers here. 50, 100, 400, 800% changes, right? And that just was really what causes just those massive moves, right? As the market catches on to that, you just see these massive moves in stocks, and as a response to these huge changes in the company's success, right? As it just becomes an excellent company with products that are really penetrating the market. Okay, so a lot on here, right? You don't need to memorize all of this. As I promised you before, there is a chart legend here. So down here on the bottom left of the chart, and a little light blue text there, it says chart legend. And when I press on that, it brings up a sample chart, right? So it looks exactly like the chart that we have up. And I can hover over anything that's on here. And the definition for it shows up down here at the bottom of it, right? So go right down here. I can hover over those volume bars, the relative strength line, price bars, any of those SmartSelect ratings. I can even head over here to weekly, and I can do the same thing there, right? So that whole large data panel, we have all those data points, okay? So you can identify all of this very easily. I know when I started out, it felt like I had this open all the time. So just as you get used to it, this is here to help you out. All right, so I'm going to close out that sample chart. And MarketSurge has additional data panels in it, right? So let's say I find a stock, I really like it. I've looked at the SmartSelect ratings, looked at the chart, I've looked at the weekly data panel, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing. So I'm really diving in now. I'm going to go over here to the related information panel over here on the right. Yeah, it's this gray bar. It kind of blends in a little bit over there. It says related information sideways there. And when I click on that, the right panel opens up and we have all these extra tabs. And among these tabs, there's really three of them that I'm using all the time. The first one is owners and funds, right? We've talked a little bit about the importance of fund ownership, right? And how those big institutional investors can really move stock prices. So I can see more information about that here. I can see the last 8 quarters of fund ownership, right? Rather than just 4 over on the weekly chart, you can see the last 8. But really the big thing here is what we call the IBD mutual fund index ownership. Kind of a mouthful, right? But really what you can think of this as, and what I think of it as, is the smart money section, right? So what we've done, it's really cool, is we went out and we found all the best performing growth funds. And then we track them. We keep tabs on them. What are they doing, right? These are the best money managers. We want to see what they're up to, right? Because they have a lot of good ideas. And so in this section, we can see that if any of those top performing growth funds own the stock that you're looking at, it's going to give us more information about that here. And so I can look, say, just at this very first one, MFS Growth Fund. They have 3.81% of their portfolio in Alphabet, and they own 10.28 million shares currently. Now, in terms of what we're looking for, right, the positive signals that we want to see. So when you're actually out there looking at the market, analyzing a stock, the key things you want to see is first, that at least one of these funds own the stock, right? So, the concern and the reason that we look for that is like, let's say I look at a stock and I love it. It looks like a great candidate checking all the boxes that I want to see, but none of the best funds own it, right? It just kind of raises the question, like, am I picking up on something that all of them are missing, or have they all, talked to management, done their forecasts, understand the industry, all of that, and there's something that doesn't really fit the bill on a good investment. And so we do want to see at least one of those funds, right? Those professionals on Wall Street that are doing all the heavy lifting, doing all that research, with hundreds of people, investment committees. At least one of them said, like, yeah, this is really fitting the bill. So that is one thing we want to see here. Now, when we're looking at that, what we really like to see is that either there's like a new position. So let's say there was 0 ownership in these previous quarters here, and then all of a sudden a position shows up, right? And they don't just buy everything they want all at once. It really takes them, many quarters to get the type of position that they want, or that it's increasing, right? Maybe they open their position here and then they bought more and they bought more and they bought more, because they really are taking their time and getting into the position. Those are the positive characteristics that we look for. The next tab is the industry and sector tab, right? We talked about the industry group, how we look for stocks that are in the very best industry groups. And what I'd really focus on here is the view stocks in industry, right? So let's say I'm in a great industry group. Maybe I look at a stock, it's just not at like a proper buy point, or maybe it just kind of falls short in some areas, but I'm really interested in the industry, right? Let's say it's the 8th best industry group and I'm interested, but that stock for whatever reason doesn't fit the bill. And so I want to see, well, what are the other stocks in this group? Right? Maybe there is a better stock in this same industry that is right at a buy point right now. I want to find out and investigate that. So I can press this view stocks and industry button, And this bottom panel opens up, right? Very important part of MarketSurge here, this bottom panel. So whenever we're looking at a list of stocks, it's going to show up down here. And then now I have all these stocks in here, right? And I can, click on any of them. It's going to pull up the chart for that stock. I can press the space bar to go on to the next one. That's my preferred way to kind of work my way through a list. So I can just sit here, analyze charts in this industry. I can press the space bar, go on to the next one. And one thing I'll note is that really generally the better stocks in the industry group are up towards the top because we're sorting them, we're organizing it for you to get the stocks with the better price performance and the better earnings up towards the top. And with this bottom panel, you can move it around. You may get bigger or smaller. My preferred way to do that is to use these little squares over here, right? So if I press this black square, makes that bottom panel full screen, right? So now I can see a lot, right? I can see the whole group here quite easily. And look, we have our SmartSelect ratings. This is awesome, right? So I can go through and, let's say I look at something here. Oh, look, 94. Oh, it's actually the stock we are just looking at. Let's find something even better. 96 on a composite rating, right? We talked about that. Composite rating is like a GPA for a stock. Perfect. I click on it. I'm good to go. I have that chart up here, and now I can really dive in and do the type of research that we've looked at so far, right? Really, really cool, super helpful. Now, this view where I have it kind of the chart at the top and the panel at the bottom, that's this half white, half black box, right? So I see a chart at the top, panel at the bottom. It's a view that I use all the time. So the black one makes the list panel full screen. This makes it half and half. And then that mostly white box there brings the panel back down. And then I have just the chart up at the top. The third tab is the checklist. And this checklist is awesome. Very important for me and even for the folks who've been at, MarketSurge for decades, right? And have been doing this, still looking at the checklist. Very helpful. So this is the William J. O'Neill checklist. And if you're not familiar with William O'Neill, he was the founder of our company. He really built the investing philosophy that we use. Started life from very humble beginnings and built a massive fortune in the stock market, extremely successful. And when he was investing, 70s, 80s, 90s, he was ordering in paper books of charts every week, right? These big paper books, they had weekly charts on them. And he was going through them one chart at a time over the weekend, page by page, marking up the chart by hand, looking up his own fundamentals. Took a ton of time. And what MarketSurge is the 2025 version of the books that he was looking at, right? We have such better systems and technology now, and we can see really everything that he was looking at right here on a digital platform very quickly. But when MarketSurge was built, we put his checklist in here. So all the things that he was looking for, all those parameters, we can just get an automatic answer on how that stock stacks up, right? How convenient, how nice. And so we can see Alphabet meets 7 out of his 9 criteria, right? That's pretty good. I'd say this is 7 out of 9 is about that minimum threshold that I'm looking at. I want to see at least a 7 out of 9, right? Again, we're focused on the better, higher quality stocks. I've never bought a 3, right? I want the best stocks in the market because they are out there, right? Those are going to be the better probabilities of really giving me a good investment. So at least a 7 out of 9. No, no stock is perfect, even though those 9 out of 9s are awesome and very, very compelling. But what I'll tell you is I always look at this checklist before buying a stock, whether that's at the very beginning when I'm first pulling it up and I just leave this open and I'm just going through a bunch of stocks, right? Pressing that space bar in the list, going from one stock to the next. Or if that's at the very end, right? It's easy to kind of get excited about a stock and, maybe get a little hasty. Well, I always look at this because it's going to be honest with me. It doesn't care about my feelings, right? It doesn't care what I think. It's going to give me a straight up answer on how this stock stacks up based on William O'Neill's criteria. It's a very high quality checklist and has really helped me out in a major way. All right, so now I'm going to close the right panel and I'm going to go onto the final part of this presentation. It's a very important part of this presentation, and it really gets to how do we actually find ideas to go in and analyze, right? Because we've done our analysis on a chart. Where do I actually go in to find the best stock ideas, right? Because we're not just out there wandering around, going through all, 10,000 stocks and just, hoping that we land on a good one. We're actually going in and using reports that we have to get really straight to the meat, the best stocks out there. So I'm going to press the Open Stock Ideas button here, this big green button, right? Open Stock Ideas. This is where we put all of our favorite idea generators, right? Very easy to use, easy to access. Even though these reports are, frankly, a lot of work to build on our end, right? A lot of, sweat, went into building these, a lot of thinking, a lot of reiterations and so on, but very easy to access on your end, okay? And so that opens up this little mini screen here in the middle of the page. Again, we see our exposure, right? Recommended exposure, 60% to 80%, right? That's our recommended exposure for stocks right now based on what the market's doing. And you'll notice under this, where underneath uptrend here, we have daily review, we have weekly review. Daily review is for reports that we look at on a daily basis. So I get up in the morning, I want to see what's moving out there in the market, what's setting up, what are some things I might potentially, buy today, tomorrow, this week. I'm looking under daily review. Weekly review is for our weekend research. These reports are more comprehensive, they're bigger, and they take more time to get through. So it's more tailored towards our weekend research. Because on a Saturday, I can look at one of these reports for an hour, leave, go do something, come back that evening, come back the following day, and I don't need to worry about stocks moving on me or something changing that's dramatic, right? The market's closed. And really the big one to look at here is the MarketSurge Growth 250. You can kind of think of this as like our flagship report. And there's a lot that goes into it, right? There was a lot of like our portfolio managers chipping in to build out this report. It's what it's really doing at the end of the day, even though there's a lot in there. The long story short is it's putting all the best growth stocks in one place, right? So all the big winners since this was built, like over the last 15 years, right? The Apple was on a big run, Amazon, Netflix, Alphabet, Shopify when it was working its way higher, Nvidia for sure was on here a bunch of times, all giving us opportunities to get into those very best stocks, those big winners, right? They've all rolled through here. And so this report updates on Friday after the market closes. That way it's fresh for our weekend research. When I go in here and I look at it on Saturday morning, I have all the fresh updated data with the best growth stocks on there, right? Very, very nice. So I'm going to click on that, MarketSurge Growth 250, and here we go, right? I can even make it full screen, right? Press this little black box. Here's the MarketSurge Growth 250. Again, a pretty comprehensive list. It is going to sort it to get the better industry groups up at the top, right? So these very first stocks here, these are all in the #1 industry group, right? And so really, if you kind of want to save yourself some time, really focus in on kind of the upper echelon of this report, right? And so I can just click on any of them. And again, I can just press the space bar. I can look at the chart. I can look at the ratings, right? Really see if anything just really jumps out at me in terms of like a high quality stock. And again, right? Like I'm looking at stocks just in the #1 industry group right now. And if I pull this up here, I can see my composite rating, right? So let's see, like here's one like a 98, right? That's really good. And frankly, I hadn't heard of this company before. So it might be something that I go in and look at. I can look at a lot of the characteristics, right? Like this one has a 58% change. It was kind of a lousy quarter there. Huge outperformance, right? Like look at that relative strength. Like this thing really broke out very powerfully and really worked its way higher. Overall, really nice ratings there. The EPS rating a little bit weak, but again, one of the better industry groups there. 8 out of 9 on the William O'Neill checklist, right? So those are going to be the kinds of ideas, right? Like we're not buying every stock on here, not even close, right? There's 300 stocks in here, but this is the best pond to go fishing in. This guy have all the big, juicy fish that we want to catch, all in there, right? So very, very comprehensive report. Even if this was the only thing that I had to go in and find ideas, I'm going to find stuff, right? So definitely recommended for the Growth 250. I can't really emphasize that enough. Okay, so that was for weekly review. For daily review, there's really 3 reports. Now, unfortunately, and this is the reality of the market, the first one here doesn't have any stocks on it today. That does happen. There's just not any breakouts from the Growth 250. But I'll still be able to explain how it works and really show you how it works as well. So the breaking out today, the way that it works is it starts out with that Growth 250 report we just looked at, right? So that basket of the highest quality growth stocks. And then the stock has to be breaking out of its base and going into the buy zone today, right? So much work's being done for us. It's identifying the best growth stocks, and it's in a buy zone, right? Like, or we're really serving these up and putting them on a tee for the best growth stock ideas and the right timing on that. Now, a sibling to the breaking out today is the near pivot. This is also going to show us stocks from the Growth 250, but instead of breaking out, these are ones that are setting up. They're getting very close to breaking out, right? So actually, the stock we're the alphabet is there again. We're gonna look at the Class C shares this time, but so this is a Growth 250 stock, and we have a pattern, right? So you're going to notice that MarketSurge is automatically identifying patterns for us. And the reason it does that is because when we found a stock that's really high quality, right, really a leader in the market, one of the best growth stocks out there, what we want to do is we want to buy it as it breaks out of a pattern. That's where we're getting the technical aspects and really getting the best stocks that are setting up for us. And so we'll see this stock here, Growth 250 stock, and it's 2% to the pivot. Pivot, you can think of as buy point. So it's 2% away from the buy point right now, right? So very, very close. So if I'm going in, I'm finding stocks really high quality. This is already going to show me things that are super close to really being at a buy point, right? The right place, the most favorable area where we can get into a stock. And when a stock is close to its buy point or in its buy zone, you're going to see these little shaded zones show up for us, right? So this blue zone here, this is technically known as the pivot zone, but you'll frequently just hear us call it the buy zone, right? So that's where the stock breaks out, and that's our sweet spot, right? That's really when we're putting odds in our favor, we're really placing that trade. That's where it's most favorable to us to do so. Underneath that is the loss zone, this pink zone here, very, very important. So the way that, just the reality of being an investor in the market is not every stock we buy is just going to go up, right? Like I would love to do that, but it's just not realistic. Nobody can do that, right? Even the best investors in the world with all their best tools, spend billions and billions of dollars, they don't buy stocks that only go up, right? Nobody can do that. And so what we want to do is we really want to handle that reality in a very realistic and humble fashion. So if a stock goes against us, what we do is we just take a small loss, right? We just get out early. We're down 5 to 8%. We'll just cut that position and move on, right? Because we can bounce back from that with our very next good trade, right? Be right back in the positive. But what we don't want to do is hold on to a stock, now we're down 15%. And then I tell myself, hey, once it goes back up to where I bought it, then I'll sell. And then we're down 25%, right? And it just keeps going. It's harder and harder and more painful. We want to avoid that mess altogether. And so if a stock gets down to our pink zone, we call it the no questions asked sell point. And maybe the stock can set up again. We'll have another shot at it, or probably there's just a better stock out there that is working, right? And that'll just be kind of a better use of our time and analysis and energy. And then finally, the profit zone, my favorite zone. Yes, because at this point we are up 20 to 25%. And frequently what we'll do here is we'll take profits, right? We're up on a trade, up 20, 25%. We could sell that whole position. We could trim a little bit, right? Maybe take half off the table, what have you. But really the key idea here is this is one of our offensive selling zones, right? So when we're ahead on a position, that's where we can go ahead and take some more profits. But the key idea, my big point of recommendation is you want to think about that, right? So if you're in the green zone, you really want to have a good plan for how you're going to approach that, right? Do you want to take that off the table, go on to something else maybe that you found that's better and, redeploy that capital? Or, do you want to hold on to it because it's breaking out and we're really just at the beginning of a huge move, right? But you really want to determine that, not just, let it go and ignore it and then kind of let it come all the way back and go down to a loss or something, right? So we definitely want to keep our eye on stocks, and the profit zone is really where we're going to think about taking profits. And something that confused me, these zones only show up when we're close to a buy point, right? So if you have a stock, it's nowhere near a buy point, you're not going to see these zones. Only when a stock is close to a breakout point or is in the buy zone right now will you see these zones. It just does it automatically for you, okay? The final report, the RS line blue dot. So whereas the last two reports were really building off of the Growth 250, this is looking through the entire database. And it's looking for two things. And you'll notice something important. It says event date here. We want to look for today's date, right? Today is August 5th. This has August 5th's date. If we're looking at older ones, right, like down here, July 31st, you're not going to see the blue dot on there, just as a heads up. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll take a look at this chart. This one actually kind of has a downtrend there on the RS line. Here we go, right? So here we go. Nice, huge run up in that, right? Massive outperformer. And we have the blue dot here on the chart. And when we get that blue dot, two things are going on. The first is that that relative strength line, that blue line, is at or near a 52-week high, right? So what's that telling us? It's telling us the stock is beating the market. It's an outperformer. That's great. The second thing is that the stock is building or breaking out of a base. And you'll see that this one's actually in that pattern recognition blue zone right now, right? So great combination. We're getting something that's beating the market, and we have the potential to buy it at a proper buy point. And so that's the point at which we were going to do our research, right? We're going to look at this data panel, right? Is it in a good industry group? Does it have really strong SmartSelect ratings? Are funds buying it? Do we have good earnings and sales? We're going to look at that checklist as well, right? All of those things. But from a technical perspective, we can really see a lot of positive characteristics on these stocks, right? Be outperforming and be near a buy zone for us. All right. So with that, we'll wrap it up. So if you have any questions for us, we are here to help you. Very, very important to us. I know that's my job. So if you have any questions along the way, you need help, feel free to reach out. You can email us, marketsurge@investors.com. You know, also give us a phone call, talk to one of us coaches, 1-800-831-2525. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and attention. I hope this was helpful to you, and have a wonderful day. Bye.